are y'all doing today? Good. Good to see you. Oh, I'll put you in the seat if I can. Is that all right? All right. Great. So what are your names? Haley, Lindley, Marcus, Bathsheba? All right. And Linton. All right. I work with a guy who has a son named Quintet. It's great. I tell you what, y'all are big time great. I mean, y'all are growing up quick. All right, so I turned this thing on and okay. Okay. All right. Yeah. All right. If I could have it up here a little more just so I can see, just right here, so I can look back at that, it'd be great. So you need to turn this back on, the mic? Hey, no worries. No worries at all. Okay, so you want to give me when the instructions are, okay, like when do we start? When do we...
They're always going to be different. Good morning, guys. They're going to be different to
Do you take a break in the middle of the hour, or... It can be as long or as short as it can be 45 minutes, it can be an hour and 20 minutes, but after the second. Okay. Okay.
Anyway, I don't have anything else going on. I know that Thursday was the weekend for Dinosaurs, but I can text her and say that, she's across the street. She's going to walk over anytime. That is not a big deal if she walks in a minute earlier.
Hey, that sounds good.
Rob Ledbetter?
Yeah, met Rob just a moment ago. All right.
They're not here. Hardly communicate. Trying to get the phone workers.
You know what? Maybe it's on.
From time to time, would you thump these kids in the back of the ears if they get out of line? Oh.
Maybe I can grab this Bible. Y'all.
What is that? We saw that. Quiz, quiz. Aubrey! You know the big kid?
Okay, test 1 2. Test 1 2. Battery was dead on the mic.
Thank you.
Morning. Alright, a couple of housekeeping things before we get started. I am super excited that we are having this opportunity today. I know that anytime we do something that looks different, I need you to understand how that works. So I've given you the privilege and freedom of picking your seats. You should know that if that privilege is taken away from you by you not being respectful and appropriate, then we have a lot of people that will be kind to you and help you find a more appropriate seat. So if you want to stay where you're sitting, you need to be respectful and responsible and give your attention. You helped me switch out for the comfy chairs. I know we're going to be in this spot for a little bit today, so we have moved to the comfy chairs. Please be respectful of those. We're not sticking our pens in them or drawing on them or putting chewing gum or anything like that. So, all right, so we are going to be in this room for the morning. We will take some breaks. We will have some bathroom breaks, so it would be appropriate for you to wait for the breaks, but obviously if you have an emergency need, you do not have to ask. You can quietly slip away without disrupting anything, but there will be bathroom breaks, and we're even going to have a coffee break a little bit later on in our time together. So that's what I know in regards to that. We have a very, very special privilege today. We have Mr. Eric Lyons from the Apologetics Press. He's come from Alabama to talk to you. He got on a plane and flew to San Angelo to speak to you. I think he found a couple other people in town to talk to, but his whole purpose was coming here was to share this message with you. So this is a really special opportunity. Some of you, if you're in any of several of our science classes, have read his textbooks, Creation versus Evolution. He helped co-author. We had one of his partners a couple of years ago, Mr. Kyle Butt, that spoke, but Eric is the main guy. He's the executive director of Apologetics Press. I think authored or co-authored over 20 books, and kind of pretty amazing. And part that doesn't matter to you as much, but is a huge gift to the Academy is he's not charging us to come. He is the Apologetics Press, and the Foundation of Truth has brought him here. So this is a big gift. Speaks all over the country, and he's come today to talk to you. So please be worthy of his attention. This is being broadcast, and so there's a microphone. It'll be on Facebook, and so if you're real excited about what you heard and you're trying to tell your parents about what you heard, they can go back and watch that video as well, which will be a nice addition to pull from. Yes?
Will it also be on YouTube?
It'll be on our Facebook page, and there'll be a link there. So that microphone there is so that if you ask questions, we can hear it, and then Mr. Lyons has the microphone himself. So be with us. Hopefully, we may have to leave your not in that line of speakers there. So we're going to make sure we get our sound right. If it makes an obnoxious noise while we get started, you won't need to yell or anything. We will also hear it, so you will not have to tell us that you heard it. All right. I just wanted to let you know a little bit about Eric. I just met him, but I'm a fan of his work. He's a graduate of Freed-Hardeman University. They are also Lyons, so that makes them a good thing there. He has worked with Apologetics Press. He has wife and kids and loves to tell people about our Creator. And so today he is here to tell us several different things. We're going to start out with creation, and I'll let you give the rest of your bio because you know it better than I do. But let's welcome Mr. Eric Lyons.
All right. Okay, I'll move backwards. All right. I might be loud enough where they...
You all hear me okay without this?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
You'd rather? Okay, all right. Fantastic. Well, I'm so glad that you chose to be here today and in this room instead of in your favorite math class, right? Don't you? Who is taking algebra right now? Algebra 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? Is there an algebra 6? Calculus? I don't know what you all have here.
All right, now, the way this oftentimes goes is like some students love math, many students do not. Personally, I liked math when I was in school until, some of those, long, word problems. Kind of like, they just, this is how I saw them. Like, if you have 4 pencils and 7 apples, how many pancakes will fit on the roof? Purple, because aliens don't wear hats. I mean, is that how some of you are not laughing at this slide. I'm hurt. My feelings are hurt. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but how many of you read math problems like this scaredy cat? I mean, come on, y'all.
I can go
Here is how scary math can be to some people like me. I went to college as a math major. And I wound up never taking a math class in college. And I just switched majors. I'm not sure what all happened there. I signed up for my classes my first semester, and they said, well, the math class you need is calculus, and that's in the spring. And by the time the spring got there, I was like, I think I'm done with math. So no more math for me. Of course, some people are English people, and you love English. Maybe you're math and English. Maybe you're just a total package, Renaissance kind of person where you do a little bit of everything, and you love English. Well, if so, maybe you could help me out with this. The bandage was wound around the wound. Can you explain how words can do this? Wound wound. The farm was used to produce produce. That just, do these things, is this not confusing to you all? The dump was so full that it had to refuse more refuse. Well, I'll let you figure out that one on your own. We must polish the Polish furniture. English, imagine, it may be that one or more here, English is your second language. Well, if that is the case, you're probably a very bright person, because English, if you didn't grow up speaking it, can be hard for folks. He could lead if he would get the lead out. Anybody else get lead and lead kind of mixed up sometimes? I'm 48 years old, and I'll spell, the past tense of lead like you would the element lead sometimes. The soldier decided to, now this is kind of hard, to desert his desert in the desert. Look at that. I mean, do you know how to spell desert? I think that's right. Did I say that correctly? I think that's right. Since there is no time like the present, he thought it was time to present the present. I tell you what, so if you ever get a poor grade in English, maybe just beg your teacher for mercy and say, listen, the English language is just kind of hard. A bass was painted on the head of the bass, of the bass drum or the bass drum? The bass drum. Okay, I didn't take music very much when I was in school, and I wasn't in band, so I'm not sure about some of that. When shot at, the dove dove. The dove dove into the bushes. How about I did not object to the objects? Maybe you're a Texas fan and you say, I didn't object to the Texas A&M object hanging on the wall. But would you? Would you object to that? Okay. Do we have a lot of Texas fans in here today? Have some A&M fans in here today? Do we have any Oklahoma Sooners fans in here today? One? We've got one? You have two, because I grew up in Oklahoma. Forgive me, I did. There's a town in Oklahoma called Muskogee. And there was a guy who sang a song called I'm an Okie from Muskogee. And that's where I grew up, in Muskogee. Oh, what do you call someone with no body and a nose? Nobody knows. Nobody knows. Okay, so that's just my feeble and perhaps failed attempt to break the ice this morning. And I just, did the best I could. Now, do you know what animal this is, Sarah?
Eel.
An eel. Okay. What's one of the coolest eels that are around? The what?
Electric.
Electric eel. It can produce like 500 to 600 volts of, for lack of a better term, electricity. Shock the daylights out of you. I don't recommend grabbing a hold of one of them. But I'm here today to begin to talk to you about where everything came from. At least creation making sense and beginning with, well, the beginning of everything. You know, it's so easy to get kind of wrapped up in, you know, in the moment, today, and we think about just right now, and we oftentimes are scrolling on electronic devices, or we're asked to just think of maybe some little piece of the puzzle of science, and some might say, well, specifically evolutionary science and our alleged ape-like ancestors, or, you know, fossils in the ground that supposedly prove that we evolved over hundreds of millions of years. And hey, we can talk about that, and if you have questions about that, we can maybe entertain some of those questions a little later. But I believe it is extremely helpful to just back up from some of those questions for a moment, and like back up as far as you can back up, figuratively speaking, when it comes to time and matter and the entire universe. And just like, hey, I think it's a good, healthy mental exercise to just stop and really ponder on, wait a minute, where did it all start? When did it all begin? How? How could it have begun? I mean, where did everything come from? Not just where did, you know, we're like, oh, well, I came from mom and dad. Okay, where did their mom and dad come from, and their mom and dad, and their mom and dad? And then not just the first people, but where did Earth come from? And where did the moon come from? Where did all of the other planets in our solar system come from? How many planets are in our solar system, by the way?
8, including our planet Earth.
Okay. It used to be 9, right? Pluto got kind of kicked out of the planetary system, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still a little confused about Pluto. I'm not talking about the Disney Pluto.
It was considered a dwarf planet.
Right here? All right. So, not just our solar system, but maybe our entire galaxy. What galaxy do we live in? The Milky Way. And our galaxy is one of what, a couple of galaxies, or?
Millions.
Millions. In fact,
Not in millions.
yes, astronomers and astrophysicists and cosmologists, they say that there are billions of estimated galaxies in the universe. And our galaxy is so huge that if you could travel the speed of light, it would take you 100 speed of light. I mean, that's, yeah, light, like how far you can travel, how far light can travel in 1 year. And it can travel, that number has just left me, but you could travel, if you could travel the speed of light, it would take you 100,000 years to cross our one galaxy. So where did everything come from? Where did Earth and everything come? Did it come about naturally, or did it come about supernaturally? Was it caused, for example, by a purely naturalistic Big Bang or an infinite, mighty God? And I submit to you that those are your two options. Some might say, well, there's a third option, and that is that the universe has just always been here. It's just eternal. You know, the relatively few people who say that, you know what they have done is they have assigned an attribute that is attributed to God, if there is a God. He is defined as eternal. And I say if there is, I believe there is. I'm just not wanting to put the cart before the horse here, okay? I don't want you to think I just assume there is a God. I believe that there is evidence for a God. But if people say that the universe is eternal, well, they've just said, well, I think we'll just reject an eternal God, and we will assign eternity to the universe itself. But the fact is, relatively few people say that. In fact, we know they don't believe that because they actually come up with an idea they have that, hey, this is how the universe began. And if the universe had a beginning, like by way of the theoretical Big Bang, okay, from a period-sized ball of matter or smaller that exploded billions of years ago, supposedly. If you were coming up with an idea for the beginning of the universe, then what you are suggesting or implying is that the universe is not eternal. Now, for a minute, let me just basically quote a gentleman, a NASA historian, who basically kind of gave us somewhat of a definition or a little explanation of cosmic evolution. He said, cosmic evolution begins with the formation of stars and planetary systems, proceeds to primitive and complex life. And so it's like, hey, first we had, some stuff in the universe, and then we have complex life, and culminates with intelligence. I mean, smart young people like yourself. Technology and astronomers contemplating the universe. This story of life, of the life of the universe and our place in it, is known as cosmic evolution. So just to define our terms, this is what we're talking about in terms of, okay, this naturalistic, atheistic, supposedly there is no God explanation for everything. Well, this is it. I mean, we got planets and stars, we got life, and then life became so smart it could create technology, and we begin to contemplate that which supposedly came about just naturally. So our question is, do solar systems as well designed as ours is? Do you realize we're on a planet right now that's rotating on its axis at 1,000 miles per hour? And we're just sitting here in comfy chairs. Aren't you glad they gave you comfy chairs today? Isn't that? Yes, I like some comfy chairs myself. And you're sitting here like you don't even realize that this planet is doing that as it screeches through the solar system, orbiting the sun at thousands of miles per hour. And we're sitting here contemplating, how did this all come about? Well, young people, I submit to you, and I don't know how long you'll remember this. I don't know what when you come across something at a future job that you have, or with a conversation that you have with someone in the future, or maybe if you are struggling with some of these ideas at the very moment. I don't know what all you're thinking, but I submit to you that creation and biblical creation, the Genesis account of creation, makes perfect sense because, number one, and really this stuff is not very complicated. People like to convolute it. They like to make it very complicated, but it's not. God did not make it complicated for us. He could have, but he did not. He began His Word saying, in the beginning, help me out, God created the heavens and the earth. You're like, I heard someone on the radio, I guess this was probably more than 10 years ago now. He was studying Exodus 20:11. In 6 days the Lord made the heavens, the earth, the sea, and all that is in them. And this was his comment after that. He said, but it's got to be more complicated than that. That's just too simple. So then he just made it more complicated and came up with this wild theory that the Bible does not talk about, does not endorse, but in his mind it's got to be more complicated than this. But it's really not. It's this simple. Matter demands a maker. The very existence of everything you see around you. You're like, well, okay, this building was designed by an architect. It's a very nice building, by the way. And it was built by some great men and women who know what they're doing. And you're not talking about this building. I mean, like, everything in this physical realm. Where does it not demand a maker? The law of causality, or the law of cause and effect, says something that we don't define or we don't, explain every day, but we understand it. I'll read it for you. Every material effect must have an adequate antecedent or simultaneous cause. Every material effect must have a cause that came before it or was simultaneous to it and is adequate. It's great enough to make it. Okay, so real quickly, I'll just kind of illustrate it this way. We have any baseball or softball players in here? I have some. Okay, so let's say that I told you that I got up to bat my senior year of high school. Yay, those many, many years ago. I'm 48 now, so do the math. And I got up, and you know what a wet swimming noodle is? The little kind of what do they make? You have them in the pool.
Foam.
Foam. Okay, styrofoam. Okay, thanks. I couldn't think of the name. So I got up to bat with a 6-foot-long styrofoam swimming noodle, and I hit a home run 382 feet over the left center field fence. Like, Eric, that's serious. Now, if I told you that I hit a wadded up piece of paper 5 feet, would you believe that? Yeah. So what's the difference? Well, that styrofoam is not able to cause something of that magnitude, meaning a baseball being hit 382. I don't care if you were Babe Ruth or Barry Bonds or who's the big home run hitter these days. Someone name me it. Who is it? Oh, there you go. See, I don't watch baseball much anymore. So those are two guys from California, right? And big-time ball players. Well, see, you may not define this, you may not have this definition memorized, but you know what everyone knows? If I told you that I got to San Angelo yesterday, last evening, and I told you I flew on an airplane, would you believe that? I mean, is that believable? Okay. What if I told you I flew on the back of a hummingbird? No. Okay, what if I told you that a snake gave me a ride?
No.
Okay, what if I said I got in a car and I drove for 15 hours? And is that possible?
Yes.
Okay. What if I told you I ran yesterday from Alabama here?
No.
Do I look like I could do that?
No.
I mean, I'm a walker these days. All right, listen, I've reached an age where I hurt everywhere, and I don't run as much, and I probably, okay, some of you are like, well, Eric, you need to just start running, even if it hurts. So here's the law of causality. And we could go through 1,000, 1,000,000 examples, and you would be like, yeah, that makes sense, that doesn't. That makes sense, that doesn't. And you'd be right. So where did everything come from? I mean, like, are we to believe that a tiny speck of matter, whose origin is, up for grabs, like where did that little tiny speck of matter come from? That it exploded and caused our exquisite universe over the course of billions of years. You see, when you can sit here and you can say, well, that makes sense and that makes sense, that doesn't. And what's amazing to me is how people will contend that you could have, any of you, light some fireworks on the 4th of July. Now, be careful with those things. They can be dangerous. But, okay, so when you want to build something, have you thought, Eric, I want to build a masterpiece Lego starship or something. I don't know. Okay, I have a son who, he just loves Star Wars Legos, all right? I don't even know what the Star Wars ships are called, but I just call them Starship. Does Bo go out and does he, by the way, he's 24 years old today. I need to remember to text him today. He's 24 years old today, and he still loves, like for Christmas, like, hey, I'll take a Lego set. He doesn't want to say it real loud. If you want to give me a Lego set, I'll take one. Do you think when he puts those Legos together, as a 24-year-old man who's about to get married, hopefully later this year, unless she finds out he still loves Legos and decides not to marry him, I don't know, but does he say, you know what, we're going to light a whole pack of Black Cat firecrackers, and we're going to see a masterpiece ship being made from those Legos? No. That's just silly. You could wish that something like that would happen, but that's not going to happen. Richard Dawkins, in his book, The Blind Watchmaker, said he's probably the most famous atheist on the planet, by the way. He said, I'm a biologist. I take the facts of physics, the facts of the world of simplicity for granted. The physicist's problem is the problem of ultimate origins and ultimate natural laws. Now, I got a few quotations I want to share with you, so bear with me here before we move on, hopefully kind of quickly. But, he basically says, I'm a biologist. If you want to know about, where everything came from, ask a cosmologist or an astrophysicist. The physicist's problem is the problem of ultimate origins and ultimate natural laws. I wish that Dr. Dawkins would maybe think through this when he tells everyone that we evolved by time and chance over millions of years and that there is no God, that he would think through, well, have I sufficiently proved there is no God when I'm sitting here saying, well, I'm just going to pass off the ultimate origins question to physicists. But let me introduce you to a guy named Peter Coles. Peter Coles wrote an article a few years ago about the Big Bang, and these are just some of his kind of accolades. He is an evolutionist who believes in naturalistic origins, and he wrote an article a while back on the what put the bang in the Big Bang. And he said this idea of inflation puts the bang in the Big Bang. And inflation, like what, here's this cover story, what put the bang in the Big Bang? And he said inflation. Well, inflation, what is that? Most people don't know. And he defined it in his article. He said it's that ultra-fast expansion of the universe just after the Big Bang, which is interesting because it's like what caused it, what put the bang in the Big Bang supposedly happened after the Big Bang, technically speaking. But it was right after it. I mean, like just right after it. And you had this expansion, and this is supposedly what caused it. But then he went on in the article to say there's little direct evidence that it actually took place. And this is in a very pro-atheistic evolutionary magazine. He said the guy who proposed this idea back in the early 1980s, adults, yay, those many, many decades ago. I saw something on social media recently that said, when you hear young people talk about the late 1900s, you start thinking, I remember talking about the late 1800s. You start talking about the late 1900s, that makes me feel really old. So don't do that with your parents, young people. He said that guy, he can't prove all this idea anyway. He said within just a few years, inflation, this idea of an ultra-fast expansion of the universe just immediately after the Big Bang, well, this had become an indispensable part of cosmological universe, atheistic Big Bang theory. The only problem was there wasn't a shred of evidence that inflation had actually happened. And then he said, we don't know for sure if inflation happened. We are certainly a long way from being able to identify the inflation. In a way, we are still as confused as ever about how the universe began, but perhaps now we are confused on a higher level and for better reasons. He's serious. I thought y'all might laugh at that just a little bit, but maybe I went through it a little too fast. So he is saying, hey, but listen, we're confused about a lot of this stuff. Imagine a preacher or a Bible class teacher or just me today saying, we want to talk about God and creation today. But I got to tell you right up front, I'm confused about God and confused about creation. But I'm sure you would appreciate the fact that at least we are confused on a higher level and for better reasons. But I don't have a clue. If I said I don't have a clue if God exists, and I don't know if the Bible is the Word of God or not, but at least now we are confused on a higher level and for better reasons.
Can we use that in math class too?
Yes. Now let me just back up. Math was one of those things, I must say, I think there were times I just said, this is just the way it is. And then I did have an algebra teacher, Algebra 3 I believe it was, who just kind of started explaining some of the why things to me. I was like, I've never heard some of this why stuff before with algebra. I thought it was just, like supposedly blind faith, kind of believe it. Kind of. Anyway, if I told you that, hey, we're confused as ever. By the way, these are some personal carry Bibles from Apologetics Press that have been made by some kind donors, the Foundation for Truth, made available to you all today. I don't know if you have a copy. We are tickled about this. It has all of God's Word in it. It's the New King James Version. And it also has about 85 to 100 pages of notes in there that could be helpful to you at the beginning and end. Like, why believe in God? Why believe the Bible is the Word of God? Why believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God? Of course, this is what the Bible is all about. For those people who don't know much about the Bible, it's kind of some summary helps for them. And at the back of the Bible, how to become a Christian. What does the Bible have to say about that? And we also have a study Bible, a larger study Bible at Apologetics Press. This is about, maybe a little less than 2 pounds or so. We have about a 4 pound, maybe a 5 pound study Bible. It's about 2,500 pages, I think. So one of the reasons we love these is because we're able to sell them in bulk for $7 each. $7? Can you get king-size Snickers bar and a 20-ounce Coke at the gas station for $7. I'm not sure, but you can get a Bible for $7 when they are purchased in bulk. Anyway, we're tickled about that. We had 25,000 of these back in October, I believe it was, and they were gone in about 8 or 9 weeks. A lot of people have been getting them. We've got 25,000 more coming in this week. And by the way, let me show you this. I think, if I understand correctly, all of you, Hayden, is that right? Everyone can pick up this book that's here right now in the back. And so this is a book that Kyle and I wrote. Some of you might remember Kyle. He was here a couple of years ago, I believe. This is called Defending God, His Existence and Creation. And it's a 13-chapter book that has these little icons in there which point you to a website where you can, or a QR code at the back where you can just QR code it, and you'll have about probably 35 or 40 different videos that come up with some of the same information that's in the book and with additional information as well. All right, let's move on here. Let me tell you about what one world-renowned, when he was still alive, he just passed away a few years ago, world-renowned, atheistic, said that God did not exist, cosmologist, astrophysicist, said on television. You know what the Discovery Channel is? Maybe you've heard of that. Okay, there was a TV show called Curiosity that once aired on the Discovery Channel. And if I remember correctly, the very first episode was called, Did God Create the Universe? Very first episode. Did God create the universe? Well, Dr. Stephen Hawking said space and energy were spontaneously created in the Big Bang. Now, Dr. Stephen Hawking was recognized as, by a lot of people. They thought of him as one of the smartest men on the planet. And, as I was watching this, and as I recall, I was watching it live, I just thought, wait a minute. He just said, how many millions of people around the world are listening and watching and just believing this because they think that a smart man says it? Now, if I'm having a discussion with someone maybe like him, or maybe when he was still alive, if I had had a discussion with him, which I never did, but if I did, would it be appropriate for me to be respectful toward him and to be nice and be Christ-like? Sure. But would it also maybe be appropriate to raise my hand and say, Dr. Hawking, you say that there is no God, there is no creator. How can we use the word created? What is, this word implies what? A maker, a creator. It's like saying, well, we have these architectural plans without what? Architect. But in order to have, like these elaborate, I have a friend who's an architect. He's actually designing stuff right now for Lionel Richie. Now, some of you may be too young to know who Lionel Richie is, but I think he's on like a television show, American Idol or The Voice or something like that. Anyway, so my buddy who's an architect, and Peyton, you'll get a kick out of this. We asked him, would you be interested maybe in helping, designing something for AP? And he was like, well, what AP needs at Apologetics Press, you need someone who can help you, design something like that's $100 a square foot. And he designs stuff that's like $1,000 a square foot. So, he has a hard time, designing stuff that's not for, if you will, the rich and famous. But anyway, if you were to say to him, hey, I see those plans over there. And he said, yeah, I did that over the course of several months. And they're like, no, you didn't. No, they just spontaneously just appeared. What would he think about that? Well, let me just ask, if you were in art class, and you painted something that like everyone in the school thought, that's the best painting I've ever seen in my life. And then you did that, and you hung it up, and people came by and said, well, who did this? And someone said, well, it just appeared on the wall. How would you feel about that? Would you feel, give me a word that comes to mind. You would feel what?
Betrayed.
Betrayed. You would feel.
Incredulous.
Yes, that word.
Stabbed in the
Hey,
heart.
man, y'all have some smart kids around here. I love it.
Stabbed in the heart.
Stabbed in the heart. Do you hear that? That's real kind of emotion coming out in words. I would feel stabbed in the... I like that. Yes.
Flabbergasted.
Flabbergasted. There's a Texas word for you. Flabbergasted. I like it. Some of y'all, I'm sorry, I should not. I'm in Texas. I love Texas. Don't get me wrong. When I make fun of Texas, I'm doubly making fun of Oklahoma, okay? I like Texas a lot. Texas is where I came to come watch the Texas Rangers play when I was a kid. I love Texas. Yes, that's right. Would you feel a certain way?
Gaslit.
Gaslit. Is that like a comedy show? Gaslit comedy? I don't, listen, kids slang.
How dare you?
Okay, I'm 48. I'm old enough, I guess, to be a grandpa, just about. I don't know. Someone did a video with me this summer, and they were like, Eric, we want to test your knowledge of sayings of young people, and I absolutely failed it. It was a total failure. Okay, so you wouldn't feel so good. Here's what's amazing to me, is people will use creation terminology and disrespect the Creator by just saying, well, it just kind of spontaneously happened. Spontaneously appeared. Space and energy were spontaneously created in a theoretical big... No one saw the Big Bang. It's all theoretical. It's theory. And what caused the Big Bang? This is on, Discovery Channel. He's telling the world, this is how it was, and what caused, this is what he said. He said, nothing caused the Big Bang. And as I was listening to this, I just thought, how many millions of people around the world are, and they're thinking to themselves, well, hey, someone smart said this, so I guess that makes it right. Is that an appropriate way to reason? Okay, let me ask this a different way, and you're not going to hurt my feelings. Should you believe everything I say just because I say it? Like if I told you that the Oklahoma Sooners football team is the best football team in the history of the universe. Should you believe that just because I say that? No. It's not true anyway. I like the Sooners, but, Texas... Well, did they beat them last year? Oh, I'm sorry. Texas did go to the Final Four. But anyway, Texas has beaten them up pretty good, I guess, of late. You shouldn't believe what I say just because I say it. Even today, the things that we're talking about. You know what the Bible says is to test all things. Hold fast what is good. The Bible says, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits whether they are of God. That is, again, with your teachers, for example. Be respectful to them. With your parents, honor your father and mother. But your parents can be wrong sometimes, and it's not that you can't say, hey, Mom and Dad, let me ask you this, or Grandma or Grandpa, I'm having a hard time understanding this, so let's talk through this. We need to believe truth because it is truth. Dan Barker, a well-known atheist in our country, and Todd Friel, a theist, they were in a debate, and Todd Friel said, do you really believe something came from nothing? To which the atheist Dan Barker, who is the co-president of the Freedom from Religion Foundation in Madison, Wisconsin, he just said this. Yes. Something came from nothing. Do you know that Christians oftentimes get made fun of because we supposedly have a blind faith? But we've already noted two well-known atheists who are on record as saying they just believe, they understand that if there is no supernatural creator, an eternal, all-powerful, all-knowing, supernatural creator, then you must believe that the material realm ultimately came from nothing. Let me fast forward here. There was another article that appeared. I quoted from one a while ago. This is from the same journal. Around the same time. And it was called The Beginning, What Triggered the Big Bang. And these go back a few years, but I wanted you to see that there apparently was some confrontation, or they had gotten some negative feedback after the article that Dr. Peter Coles had written, where he was just saying, hey, Big Bang's got all sorts of problems. And so there was another individual who wrote an article about, well, maybe we can try to correct some of these ideas. And so he said, well, maybe everything came about this way. This explanation might be right, or this explanation. And he referred to them as models. So he said, well, maybe this is the model of the origin of the universe, or maybe it's this. And then he came to the very end of his article, and I want you to see what he said, because he made a very important point, actually. He said, the most likely outcome, however, is that none of the models, or these, what he would think of as possible explanations, will be proved correct anytime soon. Indeed, the quest to understand the origin of the universe seems destined to continue until we can answer a deeper question. Why is there anything at all instead of nothing? Why is there anything at all instead of nothing? You see, well, I know this is below you all, but humor me. 0 plus 0 equals 0. Well, I'm going to catch you on this one. 0 minus 0. That's it. 0 times 0 is 0 divided by 0.
0.
The square root of 0.
0.
Nothing plus nothing is what?
Nothing.
Why would he ask this question? Because he understands that if at one point in time there was no physical realm, if there was no universe, and there is no God, if that is the case, then what should there be today?
Nothing.
Nothing. So I appreciated David Shiga's honesty here. Why is there anything at all instead of nothing if there is no God? Richard Dawkins was on national television down in Australia, down under, about 10 years ago. And he was on this panel and he was asked about getting something from nothing. Now again, this gentleman is probably the world's most renowned unbeliever and atheist, around the world. And this is what he said on national television when asked about getting something from nothing. He said this. You can look it up on YouTube. He said, of course, now be careful with looking stuff up on YouTube. That can be dangerous, okay? Of course it's counterintuitive. It doesn't seem naturally right. I mean, wait a minute. It's counterintuitive that you can get something from nothing. And then he says this, of course, common sense doesn't allow you to get something from nothing. Thank you, Dr. Dawkins. That's our lesson for the day, y'all. We just had the world's most renowned atheist summarize the very point that we're trying to make here. He says common sense doesn't allow you to get something from nothing. And then he kind of, he goes into, he's on television saying this, so he's like, that's why it's interesting. It's got to be interesting in order to give rise to the universe at all. Something pretty mysterious had to give rise to the origin of the universe. He's still preaching our sermon, isn't he? God's ways are higher than our ways. His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. Isaiah chapter 55, verses 8 and 9. Now, in context, he's talking there specifically about His mercy and grace. But we can say that overall, how unsearchable are His ways and His judgments past finding out, Romans chapter 11, verse 33. The secret things, Deuteronomy 29, belong to the Lord our God. But those things that are revealed belong to us. So, does the Bible represent God in a sense as quite amazing and mysterious in the sense that He is the infinite, eternal, uncreated, all-powerful, all-knowing God? Is there a lot about God and what He knows that I don't know? Absolutely. But I am so thankful. This is different than the Bible I showed you a while ago. This is my personal one that I've had for probably a decade or so now. I'm so thankful that God has communicated to us truths in His Word that I can understand and try to help other people understand. Absolutely. Let's be careful with our education, y'all. Sometimes our education can be great. I'm a believer in education. I'm so glad that you are in school here. I hope that if you choose to, and if the occupation that you want to have one day would be benefited if you continued your education after this school, and if you don't go straight into the workforce, that can be a great thing. But don't allow education to go to your head and make you think that you know everything and other people don't. So here's my little story. I don't know where this came from. I got it from, I've looked to see who the original author was, and I just can't find it. Okay, if so, I would put a little attribution down here at the bottom. One day, a young skeptic said to an elderly lady, "I once believed in God, but since studying science, I am convinced that God is but an empty word." The lady replied, well, I've not studied science, but since you have, maybe you can tell me from whence came this egg. Why, of course, from the hen was the reply. And where did the hen come from? Why, the egg. And perhaps, said the lady, you can tell me which existed first. Oh, the hen, of course, rejoined the young man. You mean that the hen existed without having come from an egg? Oh, no, said the young man, I should have said the egg was first. Then you mean that an egg existed without having come from a hen? The young man replied, you've got me all mixed up. She drove home her point. Young man, since you can't explain the existence of even a hen or an egg without God, you can't expect me to believe that you can explain the existence of the whole universe without Him. It is quite illogical, unreasonable, counterintuitive, to use Dr. Hawking's word, description. It defies common sense to say, oh yeah, I mean, look around. Everything came from nothing. Creation makes sense because matter demands a maker. Now, it may be that, before we take a break here, it may be that some of you are wondering the question, well, have you ever wondered this question? This is a deep question. I mean, some people would say so anyway. Where did the Creator come from? I mean, have you ever heard someone ask, where did God come from? I mean, a lot of times, atheistic evolutionists, skeptics, agnostics, people who say, I can't say that they're for certain there is no God, but they would say, I certainly haven't seen the evidence for God. By the way, where did God come from? If there is a God. And I understand why people ask that question, because have you ever seen, like, your mom pregnant and you have, one day you have a baby brother or sister? I mean, have you ever been to a hospital to see your nephew or niece or a friend who had a baby and a child comes into this life? So, you know, some of you, you've seen your birth certificate. You know, this is what hospital I was born in. This is the day I was born. And I need to remember that my oldest son was born on this date, so I can remember, you know, I haven't even purchased him a gift yet. Do I still need to get my 24-year-old's gifts? I don't.
Yes. Give him a Lego set.
Lego set, yes. Oh, I'm going to. Okay, you know what? It's going to be a few days late, but I need to get on Amazon, send him a Lego set, and I will tell him that I had a whole school in Texas that said he needed a Lego set. Okay, so I remember Bo being born. Yes, his name is Bo. It's Elijah Bo. Had a lady at church one time. I like the name Bo, okay? She came up to me when Jana was pregnant with him, and you know, I love the church. I love Jesus Church so much. It's one of my, it's just my favorite, okay? You know, I love God, His church, my wife and family, and you all. But you know, sometimes church people, sometimes they don't always say the nicest things. I've had to tell Christians, hey, listen, don't leave the church just because some people say silly things in the church. We all say silly things sometimes. And sometimes people can just be mean, even Christians that need to change and repent of that. Well, this lady, she was just one of those ladies that would speak her mind. And she said, you going to call him what? Bo? Now, if your name is Bo, I don't mean to make fun of you. I have a son named Bo. And she was like, you're going to call him Bo? He's going to hate you for that. That didn't make Jana, my wife, and me feel very good, but anyway, he hasn't hated us for that. I think he likes his name just fine. Well, anyway, I remember when Bo came into the world. You know, when we are living in a physical realm where people are born, and if things progress naturally, we don't live forever, and if Jesus doesn't return first, then one day we're going to pass from this life. By the way, you know, the Bible's perspective on that, God's perspective on that is not one of dread and fear. You know, the Bible presents a beautiful picture of that. For those who love God, He says, precious in the sight of the Lord are the death of His saints. So the world has a very wrong perspective of death because they don't know the God of the Bible and what the Bible teaches about passing on from this life. Listen, I'm going to tell you something. I'm kind of getting off track here for just a second. I want to have a healthy view of life and death as a child of God. And you know, the biblical teaching about death is, now again, we want to live our life fully as God has created it for us, to honor Him and to glorify Him. But you know, the Apostle Paul's mindset was to live as Christ and to die as what? Gain. Is gain. What a beautiful thought. If I'm here in the body, I'm going to live for my Lord. And if I happen to fall out of the sky on a plane today on my way back to Alabama, don't feel sorry for me. I'm going to be in a better place on earth. So I win either way, right? I either get to glorify God in this life, or I get to go glorify God in the afterlife. And that's even going to be much greater than this life. Now again, we don't have any authority to do anything with our physical lives that we shouldn't do, just as Job did. Okay, so I've gotten off track here. Let me get back to this question of where did God come from? Because we live in this, oh, well, people are born and they pass from this life, and they're born and they're passing this life. We think of beginnings and ends all the time. It's just what we do. We think the school day begins, the school day ends. The school year begins, the school year ends. You know, I'm 10 years old now. Now I'm at the end of 10. I'm 11 years old, and it's just beginning and end, beginning and end. So the reason people ask the question, where does God come from? In part is because we live in a physical realm with beginnings and ends. However, God's not physical. The question, where did God come from, is actually, with all due respect, it's an illogical question. And it's fine to ask the question. I'm just saying, logically speaking, it's illogical. Why do you say that, Eric? Because it's like asking this. If I were to say, okay, listen carefully. When did eternity begin? What would your answer be to that? Raise your hand. When did eternity begin?
It's always been.
Why?
It had no start.
And that's because if you were to look up eternity in the dictionary, by definition, that's what it says. I mean, you're right. By definition, eternity didn't have a beginning. And what if I said, when does eternity end?
Whenever Jesus comes back.
Whenever what?
Jesus comes back.
Okay, that's when the world's going to, that's for sure. Eternity doesn't have a beginning or an end. By definition, God, by definition, the biblical, from everlasting to everlasting, the biblical definition of God is He is eternal. So to ask the question, when or where did God come from? When did God start? Well, God didn't have a start. He is outside of the material realm. And the law of cause and effect, by the way, is based upon what we see in the material realm. Every material effect must have an adequate antecedent or simultaneous cause. You guys have listened much better than I deserve this morning so far. I believe we're going to take about, is it a 5 or 10 minute break?
Yeah, it's a bathroom break. We'll take a coffee break after our next session because I'm having some additional things. We're having crumble and coffee after our next break. So this is just a bathroom break. Let's take about a 7-minute break. You can use the restrooms here or there, and we'll be back in here at 9:10. That gives us 7 minutes.
I'm marking